Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Terri Show. I am so happy that you are hanging out with me today. So I'm going to start this episode off with a question. Do you ever have difficulty drawing boundaries with your parents? There's no doubt most of you are nodding your head yes, because at any age, it can be incredibly challenging to make the transition from your parents as the authority to you as your grown-up person authority. So that's exactly what this episode is going to be about. Before I get going though, I want to make sure that you are subscribed to my channel. So look for that little bell, click it so that when I put new stuff out, because my book is dropping soon. I've been putting out lots and lots of content and interviews and all the boundary stuff, and I don't want you to miss a thing. Okay, so let's move into why is it hard to draw boundaries with your folks for many people, even when obviously you're already way grown up. Well, part of it is that it's really about how your parents relate to boundaries and how they relate to you, right? Sometimes parents are toxic. Sometimes parents are simply oblivious, right? So it doesn't mean that has to be some terrible intention. Hey, and sometimes they're just human beings, right? But your job as a grown-up is to set the boundaries that work for you in your adult life. And what I've found over the many years of being a psychotherapist is that a lot of times clients could do it in all other areas of their life or be self-determined or talk true, as I like to say. And somehow, when they were back home, quote unquote, or when they were with their family, or if they went home for, let's say, one of the holidays, it was as if they would regress to their 10-year-old self, their 15-year-old self, and agree to things they didn't want to do, and also act immaturely themselves around this boundary violation. It's almost like being with our family of origin at times can almost like getting into a time machine that you didn't actually mean to step into, but you do. And it's like going back home again can be like going back in time, because family systems, we functioned that way for a long time until we became adults. And sometimes family systems don't want to let you change. So let's talk about some of it's really, with family of origin, it's common, right, to have that be sort of the last boundary frontier where you can do it in other places. But when you can do it with your family, then you're really doing it. Parents in particular. So let's talk about why this is. For some parents, they are struggling with allowing you to be grown up. So parents, when they have their own limitations, or if their identity is too wrapped up in parenting, it's like they don't know how to move to the next phase of development in their own life. Because here's the thing, of course, we transition. Think about parenting. When you're a baby, your parents do everything. They start giving you more appropriate responsibilities and trying to, instill confidence in you and your own decision-making abilities and teach you things. Then high school, college, and then being on your own. Healthy family systems, when you are, younger, the healthy family system should be child-focused. And I don't mean child-obsessed. I just mean child-focused. It makes sense. The well-being of the minor children are at the top of the importance list. In dysfunctional family systems, it can be, there's many different variations, but it can be that the well-being of a particular person in the family, whether that person is an addict, there is the abuser, is someone who is unwell, could be someone who's physically unwell. Now, that's out of order. It doesn't mean it's dysfunctional if someone is ill, but it actually still creates issues for kids if you learn to not speak up, not talk true, not assert a need or a desire, not set a limit, because you had parents who were extremely overwhelmed if one of them was ill. So there's a lot of different scenarios that create disordered boundaries between adult children and parents. But it doesn't have to stay that way, because what I see as being very common is that parents who are not good with the transition of having adult children and relating to them as adults, people who it's their decision to make, respecting that whatever the decision is theirs to make. It's that they want to be perennial parents. And yet it doesn't work, because when you become an adult, you are now in that position in your life. So if you have parents who are constantly judging what you're doing, intrusive, having unrealistic expectations about holidays. I remember having a client who married into a family of brothers, basically, and the mother was the real matriarch of this family. And for years, they all went home for actual Christmas. They celebrated Christmas. They went home, quote unquote, to the family of origin of the husbands, let's say, even after they started having children. And my client was like, I don't want to continue his family of origin, what their traditions. I want us to make our own traditions. We have our own children now. I want the kids to be home when, quote unquote, Santa comes, home, our home. And this was actually a really big deal between my client and her husband. And we actually did a couple of couple sessions around it. And it was really like the mother-in-law, or the mother, was very self-centered. I mean, she had narcissistic tendencies. I don't know if she was a full-blown narcissist, but it's almost like the kids, the sons, just sort of did what she wanted, because if you didn't, there was like hell to pay, basically. And she would want to talk all the time and be complaining. And so finally they did make that decision, and they actually enrolled the other families to say, we're talking about, we're going to celebrate Christmas with, you guys early or late, or we're going to come 3 weeks later, and started doing it in their own homes. And the mother-in-law lost her mind and gained her mind back eventually, because when nobody caved, she didn't want to lose them all. But it was very, very stressful, which I know if you have never been in a family system like that, or you've never experienced that, as a grown adult, it may sound ridiculous. Like, what? They were all going to sleeping in their childhood bedrooms with their wives what, while they were in their 30s. Like, what is going on? But that's where boundaries come in, because the mother of these sons, she was centering herself in the entire experience. She felt jealous of her daughters-in-law. She was highly critical of her daughters-in-law. She put herself in a position to be in competition with the women that her sons married. Now, you don't need to be a therapist to know that that is messed up, and that it's not about that. You don't have that kind of a quote-unquote love affair with your mother. If your mother is healthy, and if she got good boundaries, she wants you to focus on your family. They become, when my kids were getting grown, right? I was like, okay, when you get married, now Joyce is your first family, and me and Dad and your brothers, we are your family of origin. But you always do what is best for your family, and we will organize around that. And I don't know that all families do that, but I do know that there is a high price to pay when you are in this position of having disordered boundaries with your adult children, and that there is so much resentment that goes along with it. And it really, you're not fostering love, it's fostering fear. So for whatever reason, if you find yourself in this situation, there are things that you can do and small steps that you can take. I see this as a phenomenon with younger moms too, where they want to be friends with their children. Now, you have a friendship, like a family friendship, let's say, but you're really not friends with your children. And if you are, I do believe that is a burden on them, because they want you to be uncool. At some point, when you have daughters, let's say, going through the separation and individuation phase of development, so the teen years, if you're like the friend, if you're trying to be the cool mom, the house where people can drink or whatever it is, you're really denying your child the opportunity to rebel in an appropriate way against you so they can individuate and really become their own person. So listen, that's just my 2 cents. I'm sure people are going to have a lot to say about that, and that's fine. I just don't think, even in having an amazing relationship with my own mother that I worked on for years, but she was always a loving mother, but she was always appropriate, like in the phases of development where she didn't want to be friends. She worked hard to not dress like us, even though she was a young-ish mom and she was pretty and fit, but she worked hard to not be trendy and she had 4 daughters. She just was like, I just figured the more you guys did your thing and the more sort of corny I was, the better it was for everybody, which it was fine for us. It worked out. But being able to move into that next transition where when in a friendship, there is an implication that there is this mutuality where you'll have adult mothers talking to adult children like, but I did this for you and why don't you do this for me, or whatever it is, the way you would in a friendship. I don't ever see those relationships actually being friendships, because even when you have an appropriate relationship with your adult children, it doesn't feel right to me from a therapeutic point of view for it to be like the best friendship. And if you're saying that, I promise you, your adult kids feel burdened by it. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, let me know. That's my 2 cents on it. Anyway, let's talk about boundaries, where the moms who want to be friends with you, they want to go to your bachelorette party or whatever. Like, is that me or is that weird? Does that seem like a boundary violation? To me, it does. And it also seems like a parent who is continuing to center their self in their adult child's experience. So if you have a parent like that, it's your job to, with ease and grace, draw the boundary that does not allow that doesn't let the person co-opt your friends. Because I've heard from so many of my clients that their mom, who is more self-absorbed and more centering of themselves, has a separate friendship with their friends. Come on. That's not cool. If you're doing that, please stop. It's just not. That is a boundary violation. Get your own friends. You're grown up. You don't need your adult child's friends. And it doesn't mean, I've traveled with some of my grown-up friends' moms, like with us, right? But I wouldn't like go out with them without my friend, right? It's a familial connection. So let's talk about what are some other examples of disordered boundaries. So it's feeling like they don't have to call before they come over, being like, I'm your mother, I'm your father, I can do what I want, calling a lot, expecting you to pick up, getting pissed off if you don't, texting, even if you say, please don't call me at work because I'm busy, they call anyway, those types of things. A really huge one, though, is auto advice giving, where they just feel like they have a right to weigh in on every decision that you are making in your life. That does not feel good. And it's so painful because you're like having to defend yourself left and right to like why you're doing what you're doing, and it's none of their business. They are judging the way you're raising your kids. That's a boundary violation. And just interfering with your personal life, revealing something to your spouse, interfering instead of being a part of the solution, kind of being a part of the problem, being judgmental. So many of my clients had mothers who gave them absolute eating disorders by being like, hey, do you really need that extra piece of bread, Barbara, and doing that into their adult lives. So I think that, the first step, and I'm giving you a download for this, for part of this with the energetic boundaries that I think that you need. That'll be part of what's happening in the download. But I think that you got to think about, for you, how do you want to live? What is really not working? So taking some kind of an inventory, I'm giving you some questions that you can answer of how are you being drained? And it doesn't just have to be about your parents, because the inventory is all the relationships in your life, because it's always good stuff to check in and see where you're at. But that gives you an idea of how exhausted are you from these boundary violations in your life. And then really thinking about your life, or that there are things that you're doing right now that you don't want to do, but you don't want to displease your parents, even though you're a full grown adult. Whether it's continuing to, I had a client who would go to church or tell her parents that she went to church because they were quite religious, but she really wasn't. And I was like, there has to be a point where, and she resented it and felt like then she would try to loop her spouse into the lie about when they went to church. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be 40 acting like you're 15 with your parents, because you have a right to be self-determined in this life. And you need to assert yourself to be self-determined in this life. And you can actually, what ends up happening, if you can do this, and I know you can because I wrote a whole friggin' book on it called Boundary Boss, is that what shifts for you is that you end up having a much more intimate and real relationship with your parents. They know you, right? In a way that when you are appeasing them and placating them, they don't. And then you're resentful that you're doing that. But you got to really own the fact that that's a choice. And there are other choices. So you'll take an inventory. You'll figure out where you can compromise, but still be in your own integrity. And then you're going to start by setting small boundaries, right? Making small boundary requests, one little teeny shift at a time. And that's way easier than to feel like, a lot of times when we want to change something, it's like we want to warn them. Like, we can't wait to be like, I'm going to tell them everything is changing. But it's not necessary. And I find that it really sets you up to fail, and it sets them up to be nervous about what's going on. You don't need to warn them, right? You can do it one thing at a time, one small shift at a time. So anyway, I'm giving you the this energetic boundary protection. It's a guide for you. So to get that, all you got to do is go to boundaryboss.me/parents, boundaryboss.me/parents, because doing this with parents is triply exhausting than it is with just doing it with friends, because it's a very loaded situation. And you can also pre-order my book at boundaryboss.me/parents. And I would love it if you would please pre-order my book. I promise you, it's amazing, the most important work of my life, and Amazon would really like to see the pre-orders since I am a new author. So if you like the work, if you've been here, if you think you're going to buy it anyway, now is the time, people. Go to it. boundaryboss.me/parents. And I want to say thank you for being with me, for being on this journey with me. And as always, take care of you.